Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here bright and earlier, especially on the final day of Authenticators 2024. I know most of you have already packed your suitcases, but hopefully you can still squeeze in a fish, a fishing pole, or both. And definitely you will understand what I mean by the fish and the fishing pole by the end of the talk. In this session, we will explore the world of authenticators, compare them quantitatively, and equip you with the insight to make choices for your organization. I'm Filio, a researcher at Okta. As someone relatively new to the identity industry, 2.5 years ago, I was curious to understand our journey in MFA and passwordless. I wanted to understand whether phishing-resistant authenticators really performs better than passwords and all the other authenticator types. If so, can we prove their performance advantages? If not, can we identify gaps? As I got into the research, I found out I was not alone. I heard requests from our customer who wanted to benchmark their MFA usage with their industry peers. Also, our entire identity community want to know more about MFA adoption statistics and core vendors like Okta to be more transparent in sharing the information. I know that's a long list of to-dos, but a quantitative comparative analysis of authenticators may do the work. In this framework, we do 3 things. First, we identify popular authenticator types. Second, we define and extract metrics for authenticator adoption, usability, and security properties. Third, we analyze the data and combine them into useful insights. Just a quick heads up, we are going to dive into some heavy data stuff that may sound a bit dry, but I'm going to spice things up so that it is not just boring numbers. Our goal, uncover some juicy insight so that you can take home and apply. One more thing, I will talk about this data analytics stuff at high level so that we stay within time limit of this presentation. Also, I will mention year-to-year comparisons without showing the previous year's data. But if you want to know more about details, such as the assumption, the limitation, and possible explanation of the data, feel free to reach out with any burning questions. So, are you ready? Yes. Let's dive in and know more about authenticators. First, let's look at the authenticator adoption properties. The graph on the left shows MFA adoption rate from the end of 2019 to January 2024. User-level MFA adoption rate is defined as a percentage of users who log in with at least one MFA during the month. Now, I'd like to call your attention to the beginning of 2020. COVID-19 pandemic marks inflection point for MFA adoption, with adoption rate jump of a 15 percentage point from January to March of 2020. This is truly remarkable. And also, we see continued growth of MFA adoption post-pandemic. As of January 2024, 66% of Okta workforce users use MFA. The number reached to 91% for Okta workforce admins. The data concludes MFA has gained mainstream adoption in the workforce environment as a security measures. However, MFA adoption varies significantly by industry. A difference of a 15 percentage point separates the industry with highest percentage of adoption from that with the lowest percentage of adoption. Tech industry lead the way in MFA adoption with adoption rate of 88%, and on the other hand, government and education industry see the most significant MFA adoption advancement year to year, each with more than 5% of MFA adoption increase. MFA adoption varies significantly MFA adoption is relatively consistent across geographic regions. 68% for EMEA and 61% for APAC. Larger organizations, however, have a lower MFA adoption. For example, organizations with 20,000 employees and more have adoption rate of only 59%, while smaller organizations, such as the one with less than 300 employees, have adoption rate of 82% and more. This could be because that larger organizations are facing more complexity in terms of replacing legacy infrastructures. Also, they may more likely to have multiple identity providers and may authenticate their user outside of Okta platform using MFA. So after looking at MFA adoption at aggregated level, let's look at them at each individual authenticator level. To ensure vendor agnostic, we define MFA authenticator type according to its underlying authentication mechanism. Also, in each authenticator type, we try to include different vendor offering as possible. But if for the case, the authentication data cannot be broken down by the authenticator type, or it involves customer options, we put it into other category and exclude it from further study. Using this criteria, we identify 3 groups of authenticator types: passwords, traditional MFA authenticators, and phishing-resistant MFA authenticators. As you can see, the authenticator type are generic, except for Okta FastPass. The reason we include Okta FastPass is because it is based on slightly different phishing-resistant mechanism compared to current version of FIDO 2 Web Authent. Also, it has been decently adopted. There's no surprise that password persists in the workforce environment. However, we also see some early sign of passwordless experience. 5% grow up from 2% in 2023. Push is the most popular MFA authenticator type with adoption of 29%, followed by SMS 17% and soft token 14%. The traditional MFA authenticator see year-to-year growth, but changes are small, 1.3% in total. In comparison, phishing-resistant authenticators see substantial adoption growth, reaching to 9% by January 2024, compared to 4% in 2023 and only 1% in 2022. A critical driver of this adoption growth, besides the technological availability of phishing-resistant options, is because the every increase of phishing attacks. For example, Okta security team observed that number of organizations that got impersonated increased 50% last year. Similarly, Zscaler shows that a 58% of phishing attack increase through their network security products. Another thing I want to mention here is the 9 MFA authenticator counts for about 95% of total MFA authentication within Okta platform. This means that the authenticator type identification mechanism we described in the previous slides makes sense. It allows us to study a comprehensive data representation of overall MFA activity and behaviors in the Okta platform. Great, let's move on to look at authenticator usability properties. The first metrics we look at is authenticator challenge time. Challenge time describes the time it takes user to successfully complete authentication prompts. 6 seconds for passwords, pretty good experience, right? And in contrast, for the email, the media challenge time is 27 seconds. Yuck. But here's the great news. Phishing-resistant authenticators offer a 1/3 faster login experience than passwords, with a media challenge time of only 4 seconds. To make things even better, they combine two distinct factors, satisfying authenticator assurance level 2 requirement. They have 2 factors versus all the other authenticator types only have 1 factor. That's a big difference. Okay, next is authenticator enrollment time that describes the time it takes for users to successfully enroll their authenticators. Users may not be familiar with modern authenticators, such as the phishing-resistant ones, but the relatively short enrollment time indicate at least they found the authentication, the enrollment and re-enrollment process themselves as intuitive as that of other authenticators. Next metric is about failure rate. That describes the percentage of failed events received by the backend server. We can see that password impose significant burden on user, failing almost 10% of the time. In comparison, phishing-resistant authenticator fails 1.1% or less of the time. Great. Let's continue to look at authenticator security properties. The first property, before we get into this property, I want to mention that the failure rate matrix we just described is both a usability and security properties. But this brute force failure rate is mainly a security property. It describes the percentage of users who failed more than n times during a day. You can see that both user and admins, both user and hackers actually are willing to keep trying despite of multiple failed attempts. For example, 3% of a password user have failed at least one day with more than 10 times failed events from the time period of November 2023 to January 2024. One more thing about phishing-resistant property. We know on one hand, we see all these threats just keep increasing, and we heard about, there's authenticators that can help to protect user from a phishing attack. But 2 things must be happen. First is the authenticator must have the phishing-resistant capability. That sounds obvious. Second is the browser and operating system must support the phishing-resistant capability of the authenticators. So in here, there's a phishing-resistant coverage. That is a matrix describe the potential percentage of the devices that can be protected by phishing-resistant authenticators. We can see that 95% or more of the active devices connected to the internet these days can access to the phishing-resistant capability offered by the FastPass or by the web authenticators. So this is a pretty good news in terms of your phishing-resistant authenticators in the real life. Alerting users and admin when phishing attack happens could improve enterprise security. Also, this kind of signal can be used in the shared signal framework. So personally, I think the possibility of including this phishing alert capability into CCAP 2 or FIDO2 Web Authent standard is worth exploring for the standard community. To put things together, we normalize the authenticator matrix data to 0 to 1 range, and then we group them according to their corresponding properties. To do so, we run a survey to Okta IT and security practitioners. We ask them to rate the importance of those metrics is corresponding to their authenticator properties. And then we calculate the weighted usability score and security score of authenticators. We plot the usability score and the security score in these 2x2 bubble charts, with the size of the bubble represent the current adoption of the authenticators. In information theory and information security, it is generally believed that decision makers have to make choices between security and usability. However, the future is looking bright. As you can see from the data, that phishing-resistant authenticators are positioned at the top right corner of this graph. This indicates that they offer superior user experience and security. There's no need to make trade-off when it comes to authentication. However, we still have a very important task as an industry. Despite of recent growth, the adoption of phishing-resistant authenticators is still low, less than 10%, in comparison to the ubiquitous password usage. So I hope this work can be useful for you as resources to advocate for the modern authentication. Congratulations on cracking through all the metric statistics with me. Now I'd like to switch gears, talk about things beyond data and insights. Doing it right could mean different things for different organizations. And making change management is super hard. The work is based on Okta authentication data, which may not cover every aspect of your authentication strategy. And your user behavior could be different from the aggregated behavior we observed from Okta platform. After we released a secure sign-in trends report on this topic last year, one of our customers told me that the report was useful for them because of the data, the insight, but also because of the framework. Since they have to make informed, data-driven decisions within their organization. I think that feedback was profound. Of course, because they were super nice and gave me tons of encouragement. But more importantly, they taught me that the value of the research is not just the data and some insight, but a toolkit that empower practitioners to make changes for their authentication practice. The best part is the framework is super flexible. You can pick and choose the properties the most relevant to your organization and define the metrics that are most suitable for those properties. Leverage your own survey to align with your own stakeholder, calculate your score for your authentication options. This is like create your adventure for secure sign-in. So I hope this work can be useful not only as a fish eye caught, but also as a fishing pole that allow you to fish your own fish. So in summary, here are 3 things I'd like you to take home. First, MFA has gained mainstream adoption in the workforce. Second, actually there's one more point. Phishing-resistant authenticators has become more and more popular these days. Second, security and usability are not mutually exclusive. You can achieve both by using phishing-resistant authenticators. Third, we need to do it right together. Please consider using the framework, the data, and the insights to advocate for a safer and more user-friendly authentication. One more thing. I also like to take this opportunity to call for collaboration. I want to improve the work by collecting opinions outside of Okta, compare notes with other identity providers or software vendors, and learning more about practical challenge of adopting phishing-resistant authenticators. So if you could spare 5 minutes, could you please help with the Authenticator metric weight survey? If you are passionate about the topic, let's connect. Okay, we still have like 4 minutes for questions. Okay.
Yeah, I saw a number that only 91% of acne using MFA. What is usually the reason for the acne refuse to use MFA? Because their role is acne.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, recently, probably as we speak, Okta make a new policy to enforce admin access for all the Okta admin tenant and reinforce the admin MFA enrollment, like MFA usage. So I would say maybe at this point, the MFA adoption rate for admin is more than 95%. But I'm sure by next year, the number will be very close to 100%, if not 100%. But on the other hand, I like to mention the complexity of making MFA usage is not a small task. And we also agree the 91% is not perfect. But if you look at the industry, the 91% is a leading parameter and stats among the industry in terms of the MFA usage. Also, one more point is not only Okta, I think the whole industry are making more serious in terms of security by design and security by default. And we see more and more identity providers as well as a software vendor enforce MFA usage for the admin consoles. That's a good question. Yeah, we hope next time it's 100%. I hope every important infrastructure admin access is 100%. That's the reason I want to share the data so that people know where is the current stage and where is the stage we want to go to. I think there's another question here. Yeah.
So early in the slide, you have a metric for variety of industry.
Okay.
How do you get those information?
Okay, that's
Yeah, right here.
okay. Then the way we get this information is within Okta data, like a platform. We for each users, each customers, we have their industry categorized, and we break down MFA usage according to their industry, and we know which company have what kind of percentage in principle, but we really care about the security and privacy, all those things. So we analyze data according to their industry without looking at each individual companies. Yeah.
So are you saying that these industry right here represent, it's about your customer using your product?
Yes. So those customers, they identify. So there's there's a database to categorize each company. For example, Okta is a tech company, right? And there's a well-defined methodology how to categorize each company according to their industry. And we use that methodology to categorize our customer base. And every company actually are doing that to categorize their customer according to their industry. We borrow that data to correlate the data with the MFA usage. Then we got their usage by industry metrics here. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you. So I guess my question would be around this statistic here. So for your customers that are not using Okta's native MFA, they have a IDP handling the MFA. Is that factored into this percentage? Because as we know, Okta doesn't technically see the IDP as MFA, as Okta would see it if you're using an Okta verifier or its traditional or native MFA. So I was just curious if that was part of the percentages.
Yeah, it's a great question. The question was if some customer are using MFA outside of Okta platform, well, I count those as MFA usage within Okta platform? The quick answer, short answer is no, because we don't have a visibility to what's happening besides Okta platform. And that's the reason I was calling for more collaborations so that we can know like a fully or better information. Also, there's some standard work providing that information into different IDP. In principle, we can do a better work to understand what's going on outside of Okta platform if the customer configured the thing or our product have the implementation, being able to import that kind of authentication out of Okta. But as for now, the data doesn't include the MFA outside of Okta platform. I think that's it. We don't, we run out of time, but if you have further questions, feel free to connect afterwards outside the room. Thank you so much.